If you want a powerful relationship, you need the courage to walk away from a weak one. That's the truth most people avoid. They stay because of memories, comfort, fear, or potential. But none of those things change the reality in front of them. A relationship that drains your peace, dulls your confidence, or makes you question your worth is already giving you the answer you're afraid to accept. The problem isn't that you don't see the signs, it's that you keep justifying them. So this video isn't about blaming the other person. It's about reclaiming the part of you that kept tolerating what you didn't deserve. These are the 8 signs it's time to end any relationship. Romantic, platonic, or anything in between. And once you recognize them, the choice isn't emotional anymore. It's logical, it's survival, it's freedom. When the relationship makes you feel smaller, when it chips away at your identity in quiet moments and subtle shifts, you are not in love. You are being conditioned. It doesn't always begin with cruelty. Sometimes it begins with charm, with warmth, with the feeling that you've finally been seen. And that's what makes it dangerous. Because when the shift happens, when your confidence is met with discomfort, when your opinions are received with dismissive silence, when your joy is dampened by their indifference, you don't recognize it as manipulation. You label it as miscommunication. You make excuses. Maybe they're just stressed. Maybe I came on too strong. Maybe I should tone it down. And without realizing it, you start the process of shrinking. You speak less boldly. You dress less confidently. You laugh a little quieter. Not because they directly asked you to, but because their discomfort made you question whether you were too much. This is how erosion begins. Not in explosions, but in whispers. In the way they roll their eyes when you're excited about something. In how they go silent when you talk about your passions. In the patterns where your energy is too loud, your emotions are too deep, your honesty is too intense. But love, real love, does not view your fullness as a threat. It doesn't ask you to dim your light so someone else can shine. It doesn't require you to apologize for being multidimensional. Yet that's what this type of relationship demands. It rewards your silence. It praises your submission. It conditions you to believe that peace means compliance and love means restraint. The tragedy is, over time, you start to internalize it. You stop dreaming as big. You stop speaking your truth. You stop being the version of you that existed before you met them. The version that was vibrant, expressive, alive. Instead, you become a curated version, designed to fit their comfort zone, built to avoid their triggers. You stop asking for what you need, because you've been taught that your needs are too much. You stop setting boundaries because every time you tried, it was turned into a fight. You stop being proud of yourself because every time you glowed, they looked away. And slowly you start to believe that maybe this is just how relationships are: give more, take less, stay small. But that's the lie, that's the prison. A healthy relationship should expand you. It should pull out your highest potential, not suppress it. It should challenge you to grow while holding you with respect. Not trap you in performance to keep someone else from feeling insecure. Anyone who loves you in a way that makes you feel smaller doesn't love you. They control you. They need you to be small because your full self reminds them of everything they're not willing to become. They don't hate your light. They fear it because it exposes how dim they are by comparison. And instead of rising to meet you, they try to shrink you to meet them. That's not love. That's resentment disguised as romance. And if you stay thinking they'll eventually learn to embrace your fullness, you'll spend years teaching them to respect what they were never prepared to hold. You'll bleed for someone who only ever gave you paper cuts. So if you feel like you've become a quieter version of yourself, if your spark has dulled, if your joy feels conditional, pause, ask yourself, did I lose my light or did I give it up just to be accepted? Because love doesn't ask you to choose between being yourself and being loved. Love says, bring all of you. And if someone makes you feel like your fire is too much, it's only because they were never built to stand beside it. Let them burn out on their own and rise, unapologetic, untamed and whole again. When you're the only one trying to fix things, you're not in a relationship. You're in a cycle of emotional labor disguised as love. At first it starts small, a miscommunication, a cold response, a subtle distance you feel but can't explain. So you bring it up, kindly, cautiously, hoping to find clarity. But instead of being met with understanding, you're met with defensiveness, silence, or worse, blame. Over time, that dynamic becomes your normal. You find yourself walking on emotional glass, picking your words like landmines, rehearsing how to say things just right so you don't upset them. You initiate every conversation about growth, accountability, connection. You're the one reading relationship books, watching self-help videos, trying to reflect, evolve, and fix what's broken. Meanwhile, they're coasting, unbothered, disengaged, maybe even irritated that you're bringing anything up at all. And here's where the emotional trap sets in. Because you care so deeply, you convince yourself that if you just try harder, love harder, explain it better, they'll eventually meet you halfway, but they never do. They just let you carry the load and call it peace. You begin to believe that you're too sensitive, too needy, too much, when in reality, you're just too alone in something that's supposed to be mutual. Relationships are meant to be shared responsibilities. When only one person is showing up, it's not strength to hold on. It's slow destruction. You lose your energy trying to keep them emotionally present. You compromise your needs to avoid conflict. You become a version of yourself that's endlessly understanding, endlessly forgiving, endlessly patient, until there's almost nothing left of you, and still, they don't change. Why? Because they don't have to. Your effort has taught them that they can do the bare minimum and still keep access to you. Every time you smooth things over, apologize first, or let things go without real resolution, you reinforce a dynamic where they get the benefits of your love without the responsibility of growth. That's not partnership. That's quiet self-abandonment. True love doesn't feel like an emotional project. It doesn't drain you. It doesn't make you feel like a burden for having needs. Real connection involves two people who care enough to repair, not one person who's constantly afraid the other might leave if things get too real. If you're the only one fighting for the bond, it's not a bond. It's a performance, one that costs you your self-respect, your peace, your emotional energy. You deserve someone who wants to fix things with you, not someone who watches you struggle to fix everything alone. Because love isn't proven through how much you're willing to endure. It's proven through how much both people are willing to build together. And if they're not willing to meet you halfway, then they were never with you to begin with. Let go of the illusion, let go of the role. You're not hard to love, you were just trying to love someone who refused to grow. When you find yourself constantly explaining your worth, you're already in the wrong place. Relationships should never feel like a courtroom where you're on trial, defending your value to someone who refuses to see it. If you have to keep reminding them how you deserve to be treated, if your boundaries are constantly questioned, if your loyalty is met with suspicion, and your consistency with indifference, it's not a sign to try harder, it's a sign to walk away. The right person doesn't need to be convinced. They recognize your value because it speaks for itself. But when someone doesn't see it, no amount of loyalty, sacrifice, or over-explaining will change that. In fact, the more you try to prove yourself, the more they subconsciously devalue you, because they begin to associate your availability with desperation and your kindness with weakness. That's the trap. You give more in hopes that they'll finally appreciate you. You forgive faster in hopes they'll finally understand you. You tolerate more in hopes they'll wake up and realize you're the one who stayed. But what ends up happening is the opposite. They become entitled to your patience, numb to your effort. And over time, you become invisible in a space you fought to be seen in. You teach them that they can hurt you and still have access. You condition them to believe that your love is guaranteed no matter how they act. And in doing so, you lose the most powerful thing you have, your standard. Your self-worth isn't something to be negotiated or defended. It should be silently understood through how you carry yourself, through what you tolerate, and through how quickly you're willing to leave when your peace is disturbed. If someone only values you when you pull away, they never truly valued you. They feared losing control. And if the only time they reflect on their actions is when you're gone, then your absence held more power than your presence ever did. That's not love. That's emotional economics, where you were currency, not connection. You need to remember, the people who truly value you don't need to be taught how. They feel it. They show it. They reflect it back without you having to plead for it. So if you're in a relationship where your worth has become a debate, step back. Not to manipulate, not to punish, but to remember who you are when you're not busy trying to convince someone else. Because the moment you stop explaining yourself is the moment you reclaim your power. You remind the world and yourself that your value was never up for discussion. It was always a fact, and those who can't see it aren't blind. They're choosing not to. Walk away. Let your absence speak the words your voice no longer should. When your nervous system is always on edge around someone, when you find yourself walking on eggshells, constantly adjusting your tone, second-guessing your texts, or rehearsing conversations before they happen, that's your body warning you this isn't safe. It's not just emotional anymore, it's biological. Your body remembers patterns your mind tries to justify. You start to associate love with tension, affection with unpredictability, and silence with punishment. And you don't realize how toxic it's become because you've adapted to survive in it. You confuse anxiety with passion. You mistake emotional chaos for intensity. And worst of all, you begin to believe that real connection is supposed to feel unstable, that the butterflies in your stomach are chemistry, when in reality they're a trauma response. The right connection doesn't make you feel like you have to earn peace, it gives you peace by default. It doesn't make you guess where you stand or weaponize silence to control you. If being around someone causes more nervousness than calm, more self-doubt than self-expression, it's not love. It's emotional dysregulation disguised as romance. And this is where many stay stuck, addicted to the highs and lows, craving the apology after the silence, living for the breadcrumb moments of closeness that follow rejection. Because when the pattern is unpredictable, your brain treats those small moments of validation like rewards, reinforcing the cycle. But healthy love isn't a cycle. It's a steady presence. It may not always be exciting, but it's safe. It's emotionally breathable, and most importantly, it doesn't require your nervous system to live in defense mode. If you're constantly tense, exhausted, or mentally rehearsing how to keep things from falling apart, you're not in a relationship, you're in survival. And survival isn't sustainable. It drains your energy, dulls your joy, and kills your creativity. You start to lose your sense of identity because every day is spent managing someone else's moods instead of expressing your own truth. Pay attention to how your body feels around people. Not just what they say, not just what they promise, but how your heart rate responds, how your shoulders feel, how your breathing changes. Your body doesn't lie. And if every interaction feels like a test or a trap, it's not love, it's emotional warfare. You deserve more than a connection that makes you feel like you're never enough, unless you're stressed, chasing, or proving something. Let go of relationships where your nervous system is your first line of defense, because peace isn't something you should have to earn. It's the baseline of real connection. And the longer you stay in places where your body feels unsafe, the more you teach yourself that love means discomfort. Walk away, heal, relearn what calm feels like. Your body and your future will thank you. The moment you start making excuses for how someone treats you is the moment you've started betraying yourself. You tell yourself they're just going through a lot. You say they didn't mean it. You convince yourself it's not that deep, or that maybe you were overreacting, but deep down you know the truth. You felt it in that sharp silence, in the way they dismissed your feelings, in the way you started shrinking so they wouldn't leave. And yet you stayed, hoping things would change, hoping love would be enough to fix what consistent behavior has already made clear. But here's what people don't say enough. Loyalty isn't love if it's costing you your dignity. Staying silent to keep someone close isn't peace, it's self-erasure. And every time you rationalize mistreatment, you reinforce it. Because what you allow, you teach. And what you tolerate, you normalize. Eventually, the lines between hurt and love blur so much that you no longer know what's healthy. You begin to confuse comfort with familiarity. You choose pain over abandonment. And little by little, you start betraying your own standards in the name of understanding. But understanding should never require you to abandon your worth. Compassion doesn't mean enduring patterns that damage you. Yes, people have trauma. Yes, people struggle. But if their pain consistently becomes your punishment, it's not your job to stay and absorb it. Healing doesn't happen in a battlefield where you're the casualty. It happens when two people meet each other with mutual effort, respect, and self-awareness. So if you're the only one bending, breaking, and carrying the emotional weight, it's time to face the truth. Love isn't supposed to feel like a test you're always failing. It's not supposed to require endless justification for why you're hurting. And it's definitely not supposed to make you question whether you're asking for too much when all you're asking for is basic decency. Your soul knows when it's being disrespected, even when your mind tries to explain it away. Stop rewriting the story to make someone look better than they behave. Stop editing your pain to protect someone's potential. You are not difficult for wanting consistency. You are not too much for needing clarity. And you are not wrong for walking away from a place that made you feel like your needs were a burden. Walking away isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's the highest act of self-respect when someone has shown you, through patterns not words, that they're not ready to hold the weight of your heart. Leave, heal, rebuild, and next time, love won't feel like a negotiation, it'll feel like coming home to yourself. There comes a point where holding on hurts more than letting go, and the idea of staying becomes more painful than the fear of starting over. When that moment comes, it's not a failure, it's a revelation. It's the exact moment your soul rises and says, "This is not where I belong," because you can only shrink for so long before your spirit outgrows the container it's being forced into. You start to realize that love shouldn't feel like convincing someone of your worth. It shouldn't feel like waiting on a change that never comes. And it definitely shouldn't feel like a constant state of emotional drought, surviving on crumbs of connection. Some relationships don't break. They fade. Not because the love wasn't once real, but because the respect didn't survive. The consistency disappeared. The effort dried up. And all you were left with was a memory of what it used to be, hoping it would come back. But love that needs to be resurrected constantly is love that's already dead. And no matter how many times you breathe life into it, if you're the only one reviving it, you're not in a relationship. You're resuscitating a ghost. The truth is, endings don't always come with closure. Sometimes you have to create it yourself. Sometimes healing isn't about answers. It's about deciding that confusion is no longer a reason to stay, because you've already given all the clarity, patience, and understanding you had. You stayed when it drained you. You loved them through silence, indifference, mood swings, and inconsistency. And yet, it still wasn't enough. Not because you weren't enough, but because they weren't ready to meet you where you were. And that's the part people miss. Love only works when two people are moving toward each other, not when one is chasing and the other is hiding. Walking away doesn't mean you stopped loving. It means you started loving yourself enough to stop begging. It means you no longer want to be tolerated. You want to be chosen, and not just in moments of guilt or loneliness, but consistently, freely, genuinely. So let the silence stretch, let the distance grow, let the old version of you, who tolerated less than love, finally rest. You're not leaving because you hate them. You're leaving because you finally realize that staying is too expensive when it costs your peace, your dignity, and your ability to breathe. Some doors don't close with slams, they close with silence. And when you walk through that silence, you don't just end a relationship, you begin your return to self. That's where the real love story begins. One of the clearest signs it's time to walk away from a relationship is when growth starts to feel like betrayal. When every time you evolve, heal, or set a boundary, you're met with resistance, guilt-tripping, or punishment. A relationship that punishes your progress is not built on love, it's built on control. When someone only feels secure when you're broken, dependent, or emotionally beneath them, your evolution becomes a threat to their power. So instead of celebrating your healing, they sabotage it. Instead of adjusting to the new standard you set, they try to pull you back into old dynamics that kept you small. You'll hear things like, "You've changed," or "You're acting different lately," and not because you're doing anything wrong, but because you've stopped tolerating what you used to. The dynamic shifts and they no longer feel in control. That's when the manipulation creeps in. They'll gaslight you, question your intentions, or weaponize your growth as proof you're becoming cold or selfish. But you are not selfish for healing. You are not wrong for changing. You're simply shedding the version of yourself that once accepted mistreatment as love. A real connection grows with you. It doesn't clip your wings to feel taller. It adapts. It evolves. It supports your elevation, even when it challenges comfort. But when someone resents your progress, when they try to keep you in a box you've outgrown, that's not love, it's fear. And fear disguised as love will suffocate your spirit slowly. You'll find yourself dumbing down your dreams, minimizing your standards, hiding your strength just to preserve a relationship that's already dying under the weight of its own insecurity. And this is the most dangerous place to be, trapped between your desire to be loved and your need to become. You can't thrive in a space that only accepts you when you're broken. You can't grow in a connection where healing threatens the bond. And you cannot keep abandoning your evolution to keep someone else comfortable. So if every step forward is met with a guilt trip, if your empowerment is treated like disobedience, or if your peace is constantly disturbed the moment you rise, that's your sign. That's your cue to leave. Not out of hate, but out of alignment. Because the relationship that deserves you will never ask you to choose between love and growth. It will never weaponize your healing. It will rise with you. And until you find that, keep choosing you, keep growing, keep becoming. Because you are not hard to love, you are just no longer easy to control. The final sign that it's time to end any relationship, no matter how much history it holds, or how deeply you once cared, is when your nervous system stops feeling safe around them. You flinch at their tone. You overthink every message. You walk on eggshells, constantly regulating your behavior just to avoid conflict. That isn't love. That's survival. And survival has no place in a connection that's meant to nourish your soul. When your body reacts before your mind can speak, when your stomach tightens at the thought of a conversation, when your peace starts disappearing every time they walk in the room, that's your body warning you. And the body never lies. It holds the truth even when your heart is still negotiating. You can rationalize it all you want. You can point to the good times. You can highlight their potential. But if you can't relax, can't express freely, can't rest emotionally around someone, you're not in a relationship, you're in a trauma bond, you're addicted to the highs and lows, you're clinging to the moments they love-bombed you between the chaos. And each time they show you just enough affection to keep you hoping, you betray yourself a little more. Because real love doesn't come with emotional whiplash. It's consistent, it's safe. It doesn't silence your truth or trigger your wounds. And if you've gotten to the point where your nervous system associates love with fear, you owe it to yourself to walk away. You owe it to the younger version of you who didn't know any better. You owe it to the future version of you who deserves more. Because staying in survival mode isn't loyalty, it's self-abandonment. And the longer you stay, the more you normalize anxiety, confusion, and emotional volatility as part of love. That's not love, that's programming. And the only way to break free is to listen to the truth your body's been screaming while your heart was still whispering excuses. When your nervous system is no longer safe, the connection is no longer sacred. Leave, even if it hurts. Even if you still love them. Even if they beg you to stay. Because nothing, not history, not guilt, not potential, should ever convince you to stay in a space where your soul cannot breathe. Let it end. Let yourself grieve. And then, let yourself come back to life. Walking away isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's the moment you finally realize that peace is more valuable than potential, and self-respect is more sacred than staying loyal to pain. Ending a relationship doesn't mean you failed. It means you stopped betraying yourself for the illusion of connection. And that's where your power begins. Because real love doesn't require you to shrink, beg, or break to be seen. It meets you with clarity, not confusion, consistency, not chaos. And the more you honor your own worth, the more you attract relationships that do the same. So if anything in this video resonated, if you saw your story in these signs, don't ignore it. Share your thoughts in the comments. Someone else might need your voice to find their strength. Subscribe if you're ready to choose yourself unapologetically. And remember, the relationship you have with yourself sets the tone for every relationship you allow. Choose peace. Choose power. Choose you.